Man, I just woke up from a nap before starting to record, and I had not really taken a good look at my hair, and it is wild today. In fact, that is among the perks of this round of cancer treatment for me. My hair turning ultra curly. You could question whether that's a pro or a con. It is a challenge for me right now to figure out what to do with it, as you can see. Big pro is the amount of naps that I'm taking. This year of treatment, which is going well for me physically, which means I don't feel like shit all the time. That means part of the time that I've built in to rest, I'm just taking naps. It's good times. Anyway, I digress. I want to talk about one of the things today that is not necessarily a perk of being a cancer patient or going through treatment. I saw a post on Reddit Cancer, and it was titled, "How do you find purpose in life after cancer?" And I'll go ahead and I'll post a screenshot of the initial post. I'm going to, blur out the screen name of the user who initially posted it. I'll dox myself. You can go check me out on Reddit if you want. That's not the point. Let's read the question. It says, "I'm technically in remission after a total of 9 cycles of chemo, 29 rounds of radiation therapy, and a bone marrow transplant after my cancer relapse," which, woof, that is a hell of a treatment regimen. So kudos to this person for getting through it. "It wasn't that physically taxing for my body, but emotionally and financially, I'm kind of wrecked. Most of my savings have been spent on cancer treatments and just staying alive because I couldn't work during my treatments because I was doing freelance work that would have made it difficult to do without a proper and consistent schedule. Most days I just want to cry because nothing feels like it is worth it. I'm so depressed and always angry at the world. I feel alone, lost, and invalid. Anyone I talk to about being stressed when it comes to financial and emotional difficulties just dismiss me and say, 'You'll get through it.' How do I find purpose and a motivation again? I hate that I had cancer. I hate that it ruined my life." Whew. Yeah, a lot of things that resonate with me, a lot of things that I relate to. And the first thing I want to say to this person, one, I hope you don't mind that I am using your post as an example. If you do, please contact me and I will take it down. If that is the case, I never want to put anyone in a situation where semi-private or, vulnerable thoughts are shared without someone's consent. This happens to be semi-public domain, but it doesn't change the fact that if this person did not want me to keep talking about this, I would eliminate this from my channel. But getting back to the content matter, yeah, I'm in the middle of cancer treatment right now, and I am technically in remission, and I have to finish out treatment, and my body is still doing okay. But there are a lot of questions to be had about being a cancer patient, and to sum this broad set of parameters up, going through treatment, feeling lost, having some damage, getting through it, being told you're going to make it while feeling hopeless. I think the easiest question that would summarize it is, does it get better? And I've done 3 cancer treatments for advanced metastatic melanoma. I'm now 7 years into having stage 4 cancer. And I can definitively say that, yes, it does get better every single time. And the answer is clearly reductive. I mean, yes and no isn't the way you want to approach this, because for some people, in fact, for a great deal of people who get cancer, it does not get better, in the sense that many people pass away from cancer, or many people who go through intensive treatment, their quality of life is degraded until they pass away from either cancer or something related to the fallout from cancer treatment. So if you wanted to say blanketedly, yes, it gets better. Like when people ask, "Hey, I'm struggling as a teenager in high school, does it get better as an adult?" I think a really good generalization, even if there are exceptions, is say, yes, it gets better. When you're talking about cancer and cancer treatment, I think as a generalization, you could say, yes, it gets better, provided you're not physically decimated by it. But it is a much more partitioned thing than saying it gets better as you get older from high school. So how does it get better? Why does it get better? Because everything this person said is valid. When you're in cancer treatment, or you're in remission, or you're somewhere in between, you go through so many things that rob you of your identity. You go through so many things that make you feel like you're living a life that aren't yours. And oftentimes when you come out on the other side, it's not a world that you like to live in, even though, you can have the perspective of making it through treatment and, knowing that your life was endangered, but all of a sudden you have a second chance at it. I've had those feelings every single time. But cancer is so serious and it's so extreme and it's so much of a silo when you're going through it, that it's hard to return to what I consider normal life, especially when you every day, or however often your brain will remind you of it, have to come to terms with, there might not be any more normal life because cancer is this looming specter, especially if you have an advanced diagnosis or somewhat of an advanced diagnosis or something with a higher recurrence rate. You can't just forget about it. It looms over you. And when phrased that way, cancer just looms over you, it might sound as though it is very difficult for it to get better. And maybe I've had incredibly good fortune 3 times for it to get better each of the prior 2 times, and I can see the trajectory for a 3rd time. In fact, I'm going to read you guys what I responded right now, and I'll also post it on the screen again, because this is another broad answer to this broad question. And then we're going to break down the specifics of what the user asked initially, because I think it's worth going through. So I answered, I've done active treatment 3 times in 7 years for stage 4 melanoma. I'm technically finished up my 3rd time right now on a 3rd remission. We've already covered this. My on-paper diagnosis is so grim, while my real-life prognosis is somehow pretty solid. Similarly, for all the gnarly side effects that I've had, my physical health is pretty damn good. But it takes a while each time for your mental health and the structure of life to even remotely start to stir again in my experience. I started journaling after my first diagnosis and treatment because I realized I no longer knew how to set and pursue goals. Everything seemed meaningless, and eventually it came roaring back. It turns out I still like life and its challenges. Even if now I'm playing on ultra hard mode, I still push myself as hard or harder than before. I have to calibrate the dials a little bit differently to accommodate who I am post-cancer, and I'm sure my experience is not ubiquitous, but so far my experience has been that it just takes time. Yeah, that's how I feel. There'd be no point in me lying about that. It is one of those things where, ironically, because cancer and other chronic illnesses rob us of our time and the promise of time, the necessity for it to take time feels incredibly brutal. I know that my first cancer treatment, when I was done, when I walked outside of the clinic after my last infusion, it did feel like this snap back to color. Everything was black and white for a year. All of a sudden, I had some juice back, and I thought this was going to be persistent throughout the rest of my life. I thought I was just going to walk around whistling because, hey, I made it through intensive cancer treatment. But a week after cancer treatment, I realized I have no fucking idea how to set goals or be motivated or feel like things matter, because when you're pushed to the extremes by cancer treatment, you have the poles of this, incredibly tough diagnosis and this disease it is a shock. And even if you have experienced it, you don't ever anticipate experiencing it again, or it's just not, getting cancer is just ridiculous. And so when you get that level of low, then you have to juxtapose it with the high of getting through cancer treatment, because it's this big kind of moving target. Even if I've had good results, it's been a difficult pathway to get there. And so all of a sudden, things that seem important in other life, once you've gone through cancer, they seem superfluous, at least for a while. But then eventually, just like when you're acclimating to being a cancer patient, you have to reacclimate to not being a cancer patient, or being a cancer patient in a different phase of the game, because especially with advanced diagnoses, I'm always going to be a cancer patient, even if I do make it to whatever is deemed cured, which at this point in time, I've said this 3 different times. My oncologist, as well as several other researchers, they say, hey, man, you've got a real shot at cure. It's well, fucking prove it to me, because it doesn't seem like it's happening. But, I hope to have long, durable remissions. And even if they claim that I'm cured, I will be a cancer patient. It has affected my life to that degree. Anyway, back to the matter at hand, which is how do you transition out of treatment into, remission? Or even if you're in treatment and you're stable, how do you then transition from the everyday fight or flight of holy shit, am I going to survive? What do I have to do on a daily basis to ensure that I get the treatment I need to survive? Because I'm a good example of that right now. I'm 8 months into taking, pills every day, and that's all I do. I mean, I go get scans and I go do labs, but things have been pretty stable. So I don't have the everyday fight or flight that I've been used to during immunotherapy, or like this person was describing during chemo and radiation, which is probably much more intensive than what I'm doing right now. But they talked about it not being that physically taxing for their body, and they talked about their emotional and financial well-being. Well, let's start with the physical element of it, because wildly variable across all cancer patients. And I've had what I would describe as not that physically taxing or debilitating outcomes from my treatment. But during each treatment, I was physically wrecked at some point. I've had side effects that have shut me down for months on end. I've had to take long exposure to prednisone. And each time I've come away feeling I've lost 30 pounds from 180 multiple times. I've felt weaker. I have not been able to stay in shape the way I'd like. And just from a structural standpoint of the way I live life as a high level athlete, so much of my identity is tied to my physicality that it takes a long time for me to get back in a groove that I feel is acceptable for my like non-treatment form of life. And so for other patients, depending on how much physical activity matters to them and their overall physicality contributes to their emotional well-being, this could contribute to that as well. I'm sure this person doesn't like feeling worn out, and it takes a long time. Every oncologist or researcher I've talked to said, yeah, it's about 1-to-1 for time that you're in treatment versus time of physical recovery. And I'm sure that's, not a well-studied thing. It would be very hard to quantify that. But in my experience, that's generally been true. So the physical elements, even if you make it out without too many long-lasting effects, which, by the way, I have a lot of accumulated damage, and I still feel pretty lucky about how treatment has gone for me. Like, I have hypothyroidism. My thyroid does not work properly. I have arthritis in both my hips. I'm going to have to get my hip replaced, sometime very soon after this treatment. I have all sorts of scars around my body. I'm less mobile because of certain scars that are around my legs and my groin. I've just gotten a lot of accumulated damage. Speaking of accumulated damage, let's take that to emotional damage. I think that has been the hardest thing for me to reconcile. How is my mental health? How are my emotions wrapped around this experience? How do I view myself and my options as a person? It's going to be really hard for me to escape cancer. And the answer is that at some point, you could stay miserable your entire life. You could look at it as, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. There's no world to get back to where I'll have the same capabilities as I did before cancer. And maybe that's true. Like, I don't want to be disingenuous. I don't want to say that my life right now has all the upside that it did prior to cancer. It might have a great portion of it, but like, no one would ever choose to have gone through this. And for me to say, yeah, I'm going to definitely live to ripe old age without complications, like, that's bullshit. I'm probably going to have an impacted lifespan. There are probably going to be complications from cancer. But in order to not be miserable, you just have to start saying, how do I make the best of this? How do I make the best of whatever life I'm going through? Because that's the whole point of getting through treatment anyway. Like, otherwise, we would just turn down treatment and say, okay, well, this is what my body intended for me, or God intended for me, or whoever you believe controls destiny, whether it's complete chance or, a divine being. You would just resign yourself to your fate and not do treatment. So you did the treatment. Now you're in this version of life. And my answer to this person was that it took time, but that time is really uncomfortable emotionally. And it ties right into their next point, which is the financial element of being a cancer patient is also devastating, especially if you're in the United States, because our healthcare system is shitty. Being away from your job and being, forced to pay exorbitant amounts for treatments that probably shouldn't cost what they do via the insurance system we have. And if you're in other countries, I don't think it's cheap to sustain cancer treatment and being out of work either. So kind of unilaterally, cancer does wreck your financial situation pretty often. That is one of the stressors that does get highlighted soon after you're done with cancer treatment, in my experience, because those things are tied. You say, okay, well, if I can't work, but I can't get insurance, if I don't have insurance, I can't do cancer treatment. If you start mapping out what it looks like if your life gets worse and you can't work, and you start going, do I have enough money stockpiled? Do I have the funds to protect myself in whatever capacity for however long? That's the calculus I do, unfortunately, on a recurring basis in my brain. Even though I'm self-employed and I have not lost the ability to work, I have people who are asking me to do a ton of different roles right now that I turn down perpetually because I want to have a comfortable year of treatment. So I'm in a good position, and I am trying not to force myself to take on undue stress via working while I recover. And yet, I'd say twice a week, I'll be sitting there at night trying to relax, and something will pop up in my head that goes, hey man, you better start making more money, which I don't need, not to brag, I don't need that right now. I need to rest for several more months. And I have to repeatedly walk myself through this kind of circuit in my brain where it's like, okay, the best thing you can do right now is recover as a patient. You'll figure your finances out later, yada, yada. And this has happened for 2 prior treatments and now a 3rd one. Every single time, your brain is just not kind to you as you are emotionally unstable or emotionally recovering, and you feel like the structure of your life also is not the best. And you can see by the explanation of the response that I gave to this person that I have long-lasting damage. The underlying damage to my answer is present in how worked up I'm getting and how much minutia I can pull out of the past to say, yeah, these things are miserable, even if it does get better. And another point that they brought up in their post was people who are saying, you'll get through it, because that's what everyone says to you. Hey, you got this. You're brave. You're tough. You'll get through this. I'm not going to dive into the whole context of cancer verbiage, because I've gone over that plenty of times. And, for the most part, not my thing. But the main point is being told you're going to get through it or being told you got it doesn't help reinforce any of this, because you're sitting around and saying, well, when will I get through this? When will I get this? And there's no prescriptive element of that. I've definitely found that it ebbs and flows, and none of this is linear. And maybe my experience is marred by going back and forth between being in active treatment and in remission. But I can tell you, I made it to 5 years cancer free, or 4 years out of treatment, 5 years NED. And it did get linearly better if I zoomed out. And so I think that's the right answer. I think the only way to approach this is that it will get better, because otherwise it's a miserable existence. And I keep using that word miserable because it's easy to make yourself feel like that if you're a cancer patient at any point in time. It's easy to just look at everything and say, this is objectively worse. And you have to accept that as truth, because objectively worse doesn't mean it has to be bad or terrible or miserable. You can say, okay, these parameters have changed. This is not what I wanted. This is objectively worse in some ways, but I'm going to work as hard as possible to make it better, or work as much as I'd like to make it better. Because one thing I've gained among many positives during and post cancer is I've gained perspective. I've gained perspective on how I want to spend my time, how I want to spend my energy, how I want things to affect me. And once you come out the other side, because I don't want to just advertise that it is smooth sailing. I don't want to discredit what this person is saying at all, because it is really hard. I have gone through the exact cycle of feeling hopeless or lost or trying to figure out what this all means post cancer. But there is another side. And once you get there, you look at certain things that stressed you out in the past, or even during cancer treatment, you say, oh my God, this is complete bullshit. I don't have to pay attention to this. I'm going to do the things that I want to make my life better. And once you start building that back, you have a different version of a new life, because the old you is dead, effectively. It sucks to hear that, but the old you is effectively dead. Even if you can take remnants of the old you along with you to make a version that is new you, you're never going to have a life that is the same as pre-cancer. So once you understand that, and once you've taken the requisite time, whether actively or passively, things can get better. And obviously, I can't guarantee they will, because that's not how life works, cancer patient or otherwise. And cancer takes away about all the certainty you have in life to begin with. But I can hope that they will for you. I can hope that they will for me. I can hope that if you're sitting here watching this, whether it's as a cancer patient or as the loved one of someone who's dealing with cancer, you understand that the upside still exists. Your life, even though I made the dramatic statement that the old you is dead, the new you can come back and have a life that is very well worth living. This was a really fun exercise for me to walk you guys through how I've responded to another cancer patient, because I think it lends a different perspective, rather than me just talking about my case, the details of my life, and responding to my own set of emotions. We all feel these things as cancer patients. We feel these things as the parents and siblings and partners and friends of cancer patients. And it's worth addressing these tough topics, because there are these miserable moments in cancer, but we have to learn how to get out of them as a community. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for taking your time to watch me, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks. Bye.